Have you ever been betrayed by someone? Think back to the moment you realised someone was not who you thought they were. The glass and earth-shattering moment that rattled you to your core. How did you feel? Were you taken in by sorrow, grieving the idealised image of the person you once knew? Did you feel the emotional binds on you grow tighter? A helpless and overwhelming isolation as you build your walls back up? Did you fester, grow angry and resentful? Did you want revenge? Hi, I'm Grania and I like Dragon Quest. And welcome back to Character Quest. Yes, I'm back. I know you guys missed me so much. Maybe. Character Quest is a series where I deep dive on Dragon Quest characters that I personally find very interesting. Last time, a few months ago, we covered the very popular Jessica Albert, one of the protagonists from Dragon Quest VIII. And today, I'd like to cover a character who isn't quite as mainstream, and in fact, the antagonist of Dragon Quest IX. Corvus. We have less background on Corvus than we did with characters like Jessica or Jasper, but I'm going to cover and analyse what I've got to work with here. For this one, I have to give a massive spoiler warning for Dragon Quest IX. In other character quests, I kind of got away with talking minimally about major plot points or the endings of the games, but unfortunately this time I'll be talking about all the biggest plot points in Dragon Quest IX, ending and all. You have been warned. Sit back, relax, let's get a mosey on and I'm going to jump right into it. Corvus was a Celestrian, essentially a guardian angel. Celestrians often get assigned as a guardian to towns in Dragon Quest IX. They act as protectors of the residents of said town and guide the deceased into the afterlife. Their existence is often questioned by people, as they are not meant to be seen by humans. Celestrians have a headquarters of sorts, the observatory. This is not meant to be confused with heaven. To be honest, I'm not sure what the afterlife is intended to be in this game. There is a realm of the Almighty, designed to be the home of the Almighty Zenith, who is intended to be a form of God and created the world of Dragon Quest IX, known as the Protectorate. It is also home to his daughter, Celestria. This could be interpreted as a heaven of sorts, but it's a bit vague. The Celestrians protect the humans of the Protectorate, and in return gather benevolence, the essence of human gratitude, kindness, and peace, that they offer to the Yggdrasil at the top of the observatory. It is believed amongst the Celestrians when enough benevolence has been offered, the Yggdrasil will bear fruit, and all Celestrians will be granted to the realm of the Almighty to live in eternal peace. I know I'm covering a lot of lore here, but I promise it's all central to Corvus' story. I'm also once again assuming the majority of viewers of this video have played Dragon Quest IX. Way to narrow your audience, Grania. I hope Jedward and Victoria Justice liked this video. Now, I'm going to be telling this story in chronological order, not exactly how it's told in the game. In the game, we get told different parts of the tale through a lot of environmental storytelling and character monologues. We don't even get the full picture until pretty close to the end of the game. Corvus was the guardian of a very small town called Wormwood Creek. As a Celestrian, he was very well revered by his peers. He trained Aquila on how to be a good guardian, who later trained you, the hero, on how to do the same over Angel Falls. Until one day, Corvus fell from the observatory, landing injured in Wormwood Creek, and made himself visible to the humans living there. He was discovered by a girl named Serena. She's not to be confused with Serena from Dragon Quest XI, but on that thought, I'm now adding her to the list of characters to quest, who upon seeing what she believed to be just an injured man, took him into her home to treat his wounds. Of course, upon noticing that he had literal angel wings, she put two and two together and identified him as Corvus, the guardian on the statue that they keep in town. Serena treats him warmly and nurses him back to health. Throughout his time, her and Corvus develop a bond, which is heavily implied to be romantic. One day, while Corvus is still recovering, Wormwood Creek is visited, or rather invaded, by an army of the Giddish Empire. As an Irish person, that's not going over my head. The Empire want to claim Wormwood Creek, and Serena's father tries to shoo them away by saying that the village has nothing to offer them, and as a poor village, the Empire would find no benefit there. To which the general of the army spots Serena standing behind her father, and states that the village may actually have something to offer. It's women. He states that Serena would make a fine wife to someone, and attempts to kidnap her. The implications of this are just... ugh. Corvus, despite still recovering from his injuries of the fall, spots the altercation happening through the window and intervenes, using his magic powers. He manages to scare off the army for now, but unfortunately he has revealed himself as a Celestian to the Giddish Empire. But time passes and things in Wormwood Creek appear to be peaceful, and Corvus has almost fully recovered from his wounds. He gets out of bed and visits his own statue in the church. Serena finds him and tells him he should still be in bed to fully recover, but Corvus informs her he has spent far too long away from his duties as a Celestian. He gives her a serene necklace, a necklace imbued with the power to inform her when a Celestian is nearby, and tells her he will always be watching her. This warm moment is interrupted when Serena's father runs into the church to tell them that the Giddish Empire has returned, looking to take Corvus. Serena's father instructs the pair to go hide by a secret spring north of the village, and to take a special medicine with them just in case. Serena's father tells them he will tell the Imperial soldiers that Corvus had left the village and went back to where he came from. Corvus wishes to fight the soldiers, but relents after Serena begs him to go with her. Realizing that the necklace Corvus gave her would give away that a Celestian was near, she hides it underneath Corvus's statue before they leave. They arrive at their hiding spot and Corvus once again insists on returning to the village to take on the soldiers. Serena agrees, on the condition he takes the special medicine to heal himself more before he goes. Corvus agrees, but realizes quickly that the special medicine was actually a sleeping potion. He collapses. Serena apologizes to him while he sleeps, saying she could not let him return to fight and risk him becoming gravely injured, and that they both will be safe where they are. But unfortunately, the general and his soldiers find them. Serena is baffled on how they managed to find their hiding spot, until she hears her father's voice boom from behind the soldiers. He loudly states that he made a deal with the general that if he hands Corvus over to him, they would leave Wormwood Creek unharmed. Corvus begins to fade in and out of consciousness, but only long enough to hear Serena's father state that Serena complied with the plan by giving Corvus the sleeping potion. Serena tries to tell Corvus that she had no part in this, but Corvus passes out again before he can hear any of it. The soldiers take Corvus, but in another twist in this tragedy, orders the guards to execute both Serena and her father anyway. Serena watches her father murdered in front of her, and shouts to Corvus that no matter what, she will look for him and find him, to be with him once more. Serena is implied to be murdered alongside her father after this. Sometime later, Corvus awakes. He's chained to the floor in a large, cold, dark room, with his powers encased by a seal on the floor. He's deep in the dungeon under Gittingham Palace. The king of the Giddish Empire, King Godfrey, is killed shortly after this by his own son Godwin in order to take the throne for himself, leading the empire to fall deeper into corruption. The Giddish Empire is ultimately wiped out in battle with a dragon named Greynarl. However, Corvus is not rescued and is presumed dead, so he remains trapped deep in the dungeon of Gittingham Palace for 300 years. And 300 years later is where the hero of Dragon Quest IX's story begins in Angel Falls. Right, let's pause for a moment and think about that background. For starters, by far the most grim character background we've had so far. It really, puts a damper on Jasper's villain origin story of Hendrik ignoring him once. I mean, if Hendrik ignored me, I'd crash out too, to be fair. Anyway, let's talk about Serena first. Her main theme here is naivety and selflessness. There was very little foresight and self-consideration in her giving Corvus the sleeping potion. The odds were, if the soldiers did not find them, they would have killed her father, many of the villagers in Wormwood Creek, and she would likely have been taken to be wed to one of the soldiers. Corvus was immensely powerful, likely in his state still wielded the power of 1,000 soldiers and their little spears. And he could fly and shoot lightning. Sure, there would have been collateral damage, but I have very little doubt Corvus would have had much issue there, even with the size of the army. But hindsight is 2020, and this does show a huge amount of selflessness and the intense love for Corvus from Serena. Just the thought of Corvus getting hurt was too much to bear, and that's why she did what she did. Well, I could speculate on the fact she did not take the well-being of her father or neighbours into consideration at all in this decision. I can see the vision. Corvus is kind of like a higher being of sorts, and I can see why she found that to take precedence above all else. Now for her father, you could see his priority, understandably, was his daughter. After the general sharing intentions of what he wishes to do with Serena, as a father, I can see why he'd take any and all actions necessary to prevent that from happening. It's strange that even though Serena's father is the one to commit the betrayal, his actions are somewhat more understandable than Serena's, if that makes any sense at all. Corvus could be seen as reckless and impulsive. We are able to gather from his reaction to seeing Serena's attempted kidnapping and from him gifting her the Serene necklace that the feelings between Serena and Corvus are mutual. But this love for Serena is ultimately what causes his knee-jerk reaction to reveal himself to the Imperial soldiers. And even though we are given little to go off from these backstory cutscenes, it does teach us a lot about Corvus and Celestrians as a whole. While Celestrians are beings that are designed to act as protectors to humans, to gather benevolence, in order for the Celestrians to access the realm of the Almighty, this is not simply just a transactional relationship. The Celestrians can grow attached to their assigned town, can feel a sense of camaraderie with their fellow Celestrians, and most importantly, in Corvus's instance, develop romantic feelings towards the humans. This also shows that Celestrians can be reactive. They're not infallible beings that only know peace and the best way to protect. They can act impulsively and screw up, creating more danger in the process. While being celestial beings, they, like humans, are emotional beings that can lack foresight. They are not simply all-seeing eyes with wisdom beyond years. They may guide and orchestrate peace and serenity in the Protectorate, but that does not necessarily mean it is all they can feel. Why is this important? In Corvus's story, it's absolutely paramount, because since Celestrians can feel emotions like love, they can also feel betrayed. They can also feel rage, and Corvus felt that betrayal and rage, and he festered on it. He sat in that dungeon in chains, feeling that ball of resentment grow and grow, and he had 300 years to let that resentment grow to an incomprehensible size. So let's get to the main character of Dragon Quest IX. The hero is, as per usual, a silent protagonist with the caveat that you can design as well as customize the appearance and gender of. I'm only mentioning this to highlight the intention of the developers for you to create a self-insert of sorts into the game, which has not been done in previous games. This time, the developers wanted you to be the protagonist. Your party is also entirely silent and designable by you. This was generally a very cool feature, but created the challenge of not having the banter and character development of your party that is in other games. As a 10-year-old playing the game, I actually didn't struggle with this feature. I created characters from scratch using the customization feature and assigned everyone personalities, backstories, even imagined dialogue the characters would have with one another, and speculations as the story unraveled. As the game continued, I grew attached to these characters and rooted for their survival and success. None of this is relevant to Corvus' story, but I wanted to segue to make that statement. I see quite a bit of criticism online about this feature of Dragon Quest IX. I think from the perspective of a very imaginative 10-year-old, I don't know if I actually would have enjoyed the game as much if I wasn't given the freedom to be so creative and involve my own thoughts and feelings so intrinsically into the game. I think that's why I feel such a connection to all the characters, as well as Corvus, despite being an antagonist 15 years later. Oh my god, I played Dragon Quest IX 15 years ago. Oh my god. But you're not entirely left with your own thoughts and theories throughout the game. You have a spoken sidekick, Stella. Stella isn't in your party per se, but she accompanies you as a nod to the "Hey, look, listen" fairy from Legend of Zelda. In the first stages of the game, you only know Corvus as Akila's mentor, up until he went missing in action. You can read about him in the library, and visit a memorial for him in the observatory in the intro of the game. That is all you understand of him for the first act. However, you get some hints to the overarching story. In the middle of Act 1, as you're leaving Coffinwell, you see a wandering spirit searching the woodlands. She simply looks around, acknowledges that he isn't here, and leaves. Stella simply remarks that she just seemed rude, and you swiftly move on to the next area of the game. Of course, now that I've already given you the context, we know that this is Serena looking for Corvus. But as the player playing the game for the first time, you have absolutely no context to what is going on here. And odds are you will push this to the back of your mind and forget about it while progressing through the other subplots of the game. That is, until later on in the game you travel to a town called Doorbridge. Upon entering, you encounter Serena's ghost once more. She acknowledges you this time as a Celestrian, but upon realizing you're not Corvus, loses interest and leaves once more. Stella once again chalks it up to a strange occurrence and you move on. This is usually where Serena leaves your short-term memory and becomes a more pertinent plot point in Dragon Quest IX. The player, now with some more understanding of the plot, will try and tie together how this lost spirit may connect to the overall story. But at this point in the game you still have very little to go on, and your main focus at this stage is collecting the missing fruit of the Yggdrasil, so you carry on once more. It isn't until you collect all these figs and experience betrayal yourself by Aquila when he takes them to hand over to the Giddish Empire that you fall off the Starlight Express. That's the magical flying train in Dragon Quest IX. Don't worry about it, it's just a thing. But hold on. The The Giddish Empire? Weren't they wiped out 300 years ago? They were indeed attentive viewer, but yet here they are back again. King Godwyn and the rest of the Empire resurrected as monsters, seemingly unaware that they'd ever been wiped out to begin with. How were they brought back? We'll get to that. First, let's bring the attention back to the heroes' party at the start of Act 2, having landed in Wormwood Creek in the very same spot Corvus had landed all those years ago. It is here we begin to gather more knowledge and context clues on Corvus and his attachment to this small village. We can see that the statue has fallen into disrepair and is now left in a far corner of the village, disregarded. The town, despite having forgotten a lot of its history, understands that disaster once befell the village and attributes this to a stranger being brought here. The village is incredibly apprehensive of the hero as a result, and we can see on the stone tablet that replaces Corvus' statue in the church reading, "This stone stands in place of the abomination that brought disaster on our village. Trust outsiders at your peril. Fellowship starts and ends at home." The hero and their party travel north to the spring, and there we encounter Serena's spirit once more. It is here we finally get to speak with Serena, and she asks us to return to the village to find the necklace she hid under the statue, which we do, after a bit of help from a villager named Wallace, as at this stage we do not know the statue's original location at the church, and we return the necklace to Serena. Here Serena shares the first half of her story with Corvus. To thank us for finding the necklace, she helps you access a location in the game that allows you to progress, and Corvus and Serena's plot is paused once again to make the hero move on with other subplots. Midway through Act 2, we take on the bosses of Gittingham Palace, which, by the way, as a kid, that King Godwyn boss battle drove me insane. I have this core memory of after hours of attempting this boss, I was biting my lip so hard throughout the second phase that I had a deep cut in my lip for weeks. It didn't help that I was an absolute dumbass kid who had no understanding of turn-based RPGs or grinding in these games. I only wanted to farm XP on the monsters I thought were cute, so I would go back to Angel Falls to fight the pink sanguinis and the blue slimes, and I'd be scratching my head wondering why I wasn't leveling up. As well as this, I'd only equip armor I thought looked good on my characters. It's a miracle I even beat the game at all. I created my own draconian mode without even knowing it. Back on topic. After defeating King Godwyn, the final boss of Gittingham Palace, you gain access to the dungeons where you free many Celestrians that had been captured and trapped there for years. You explore deeper and deeper into the depths until you finally encounter a Celestrian chained by the arms and legs in the center of a large cell, with a large magic seal beneath them, larger than any other seal on any of the other imprisoned Celestrians. He is muttering to himself angrily about some group being an abomination. You release him, as you did with all the other Celestrians. It's worth noting here that his wings appear to be half feathered and half sort of bat-like. This hints at Corvus's hatred slowly stripping him of his Celestrian self. His mutterings become clearer. He professes his hatred of mortal humans, and alongside that his hatred of the Celestrians that have forgotten about him and not sought to rescue him during the centuries of his captivity. He admits to being the one who resurrected the Giddish Empire and being the culprit of the light beam that wreaked havoc on the observatory, knocking the figs from the Yggdrasil and causing your fall and loss of your wings. Topping it all off, he declares he murdered Zenus the Almighty with this beam, making him the new Almighty of the world. He fights you, and you are powerless to act. Due to a law in the celestial world that you cannot harm a superior, he takes you down in one blow and flies off to take over the realm of the Almighty for himself. To add insult to injury, while you're picking yourself up and Stella reflects on the whole situation, Serena enters the cell, just moments too late to be reunited with Corvus. She fills you in on the rest of the story of what happened back in Wormwood Creek 300 years prior. She leaves after this, off to search for Corvus once more. You return to the observatory with the hero's party to plan what to do next. You are guided by a voice to the Yggdrasil. The Yggdrasil, which we learn by this point in the game is actually the spirit of Celestria, Zenus' daughter, bears one more fruit and hands it down to you. This fig holds the power to make the hero mortal once consumed. This would mean you'd be able to fight Corvus. The hero eats the figs with little hesitation, well aware they have limited time before they are no longer able to see the Celestrians, or Stella. You board the Starlight Express and travel to the realm of the Almighty, which now has been taken over by Corvus and transformed into a dark realm, renamed the Realm of the Mighty. You make the long journey up through the realm, fighting many of the Giddish Empire bosses once more. Thankfully, not including King Godwin. You arrive at the top of the realm, where you find Corvus sitting smugly in the throne he has taken from Zenus. He reiterates his hatred for the mortal realm, stating they are all tainted with sin, and the only solution is the extermination of all humankind. You fight him, and this time you are no longer held back by the laws of Celestrians. You can now act and land blows on him. Once defeating him, he falls, but he does not lose confidence. He acknowledges that you have stripped yourself of your Celestrian identity, but that we are not the only ones who can do that. And with that, he sheds the last of his celestial feathers on his wings and flies south. You journey below to the throne room to meet him, and Corvus instructs his dragon peon Barbarous to fight you. This is the 5th boss you fight in this dungeon area, by the way. Dragon Quest IX was ruthless. And when you take the grottos into consideration, those are baby bosses by comparison. After defeating Barbarous, you approach Corvus, who is now encased in a chrysalis-type bubble. I think it's important to comment on the fact that he is in the fetal position in this bubble. I think this is intentional in some way. It shows that although he has become this almighty being wielding immense power, he's still suffering from the hurt and grief of Serena's supposed betrayal. But as you approach him, he shatters the bubble, revealing his fully transformed self. He is now unrecognizable from the Celestrian he once was, now a green demon with horns and abs. You fight him again, a long, difficult battle, but the hero and their party's determination carries them through, and they land the finishing blow on Corvus, defeating him once and for all. When you land this blow, he throws his head back and covers his head, almost like someone who's ashamed or in pain. Corvus questions momentarily how a mere mortal could defeat him, but snaps back to his confidence once more, determined to deliver one final blow onto the Protectorate, annihilating all mortals. But before he can release his power, a voice calls out to him. A spirit floats up to face him. It's Serena. At first, Corvus is shocked, but then chastises her, calling her treacherous, and demands to know what business she could possibly have with him. To which, Serena touches him with the serene necklace you found for her. This transfers all memories Serena had of the events of Wormwood Creek to Corvus. Corvus, now knowing the truth of Serena's intentions that day, instantly reverts back to his old Celestrian self. He apologizes to Serena for ever thinking she could betray him, and praises her for having the resolve to spend so long searching for him. He turns to the hero, acknowledging now who you are and that you are Akila's apprentice. He asks you to apologize to him for his failings as a mentor. Yeah, about that, Corvus. Anyway, Corvus and Serena, united at last and their spirits finally appeased, can finally pass on together in peace. With the world saved, the Celestrian's long duty is finally complete, and Celestia returns to her goddess self and travels all Celestrians to the newly restored realm of the Almighty. Given the fact the animation for the Celestrians passing and Corvus and Serena's are the same, I think we can assume that's where they went too. But as I could not find them there in the postgame, jury's out on that one. Celestia thanks you for your duty, but informs you your duties are not complete. You must return to the Protectorate and act as the sole guardian of the mortal realm. So I guess I just gotta do all the work around here, cause I did not see a single Celestrian do a tap this whole time. Take this as a lesson, kids. The only reward for hard work is more work, I guess. Jokes aside, you return to the Protectorate and say your goodbyes to Stella and the Celestrians. Oh, and Sterling too. I forgot about him. He shows up in the middle of Act 2 and he's pretty cool, I guess. He might also secretly be a dragon. If I had a penny for every time a Dragon Quest character might secretly be a dragon, I'd have 2 pennies, which is not a lot. I don't know, man. Dragon Quest IX had so much lore, it makes my head hurt. And I'm supposed to know these things. It's kind of my thing. But that is the end of Corvus and Serena's tale, the tragic star-crossed lovers of Dragon Quest IX. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's just take it bit by bit. First of all, I have to laugh at the fact Corvus literally only cared about apologizing to Aquila. Bro tried to destroy all of humanity and revive the Giddish Empire, all because of something he misheard his situationship's dad say while being on the Dragon Quest equivalent of Ambien. That's gonna take more than a ukulele singing apology video, I tell you that much. Granted, he was chained up in the bottom of an underground dungeon for 300 years, so he's just slightly above Jasper in terms of pettiness, I guess. I suppose I'd crash out a little bit in that situation too. I think I'd just get over it. I'm obviously joking. But that made me think about how bad Corvus must have smelled. How did he use the bathroom? Do Celestrians need bathroom breaks? Actually, I don't want to know. Anyway, This was a really interesting story with a lot of tragedy, but really fleshed out characters despite the limited amount of scenes we actually get of them in the grand scheme of the game. There is for sure an underlying theme of perceived betrayal and misdirection in this game, which is working in tandem with a theme of lying and misdirection in order to protect others. We see it with Corvus and Serena, we see it with the hero and Aquila, as well as through many of the subplots within the game. We see it in Brigadoon, Angel Falls, Bloomingdale. Honestly, I could make a whole other video on all the instances of this theme alone. But the main example of this is Corvus and Serena. If there was a message this game was trying to send, I think it would be that sometimes people will lie and deceive you, and sometimes you will feel compelled to lie to others in order to protect them. But as we learn, sometimes it can be a harmless comfort to avoid a greater pain, or it can cause some more harm than good, creating further danger. Corvus is an example of the latter, in a very extreme expression. He took the lie he was told and ruminated on it for centuries until he became so consumed by his hatred that he existed solely out of desire of destruction. But he would not have felt any of these things had he not felt love for Serena at some stage. Serena, on the other hand, was consumed by regret, as well as her love for Corvus. This unfinished business is what left her spirit roaming the world in search of him for so long. Expanding on that, there's actually a bit more to the story I'm yet to talk about. Alright, you're going to want to brace yourselves for this part. I thought, when writing this script, that this would actually be a short video. But then there I was, scrolling through the wikis and YouTube channels, replaying the game myself to get all of the context I needed to get the most factual information, and then I thought I'd gathered everything I needed until I realised I forgot an absolutely excruciatingly important detail. In Dragon Quest IX, there are DLC. And good lord. Oh, Jesus. I'm going to try and cover everything, but I actually don't know if I honestly can. This game is just so full of different side quests, NPCs, and further knowledge, secret bosses. It's an absolute maze. And that is just for the story of Corvus and Serena. That doesn't even get into things like Zenith and Celestria, are Celestria and Stella sisters, the entire history of the Gittish Empire, the three dragons, Aquila and Pavo, Patty's backstory as a traveller, the fact that characters from previous Dragon Quest games just show up and stay at the inn, and the implications of that. What is going on with this game? I'm going insane. I feel like H-Bomber doing an expose. But let's just calm down and take it step by step. Nice and simply put. In a DLC quest, have you seen Charlene, the mayor of Wormwood Creek? In a DLC quest, have you seen Charlene? The mayor of Wormwood Creek asks you to find his daughter Charlene, who has run off playing somewhere. You find her in Hope Springs playing with a ghost child that Charlene can see for some unexplained reason. She refuses to go home unless you find her a bunch of shit she can make into a friendship bracelet with the ghost child. After completing this, the ghost child tells you she saw something horrible there many years ago, involving an old man, girl, and Celestrian getting attacked by Imperial soldiers. All sounds familiar up until this point, until she remarks that a big liney monster thing came in and took the girl away up north. Next quest the mayor gives you is Chronic Delay, where you are sent to Upover to help the chronicler, who needs a bunch of items I didn't have, so I had to fight birds until I got the rare drop, which took forever. Anyway, after you bring the items to him, he remarks that he saw a girl named Serena from Wormwood Creek who was looking for an item called Nod's Tear. Then the next quest, here with Nod's Tear, you visit the mayoress in Bloomingdale who says Serena had visited looking for Nod's Tear and had been redirected to Gleba. You go to Gleba, you speak with a jeweler there who tells you that he has a Dragon's Tear jewel and will give it to you if you bring him a crown jewel, which you can find if you beat a boss in a grotto with fear in the name and has at least 9 floors. So you run around and somehow find this grotto, which are completely random and procedurally generated, by the way. You get the jewel, you bring it back to Gleba, and on your way back, bump into Serena. But Serena's not in her spirit form, she's in human form. Why? I don't know. Serena says she's looking for Nod's Tear to give to someone named Nodoff. You just let her leave for some reason and return to the jeweler, who says his tear has nothing to do with Nod's Tear and he gives you whatever he has, but it doesn't really matter now, does it? So the next quest, called Do Not Disturb. If you gain access back onto the Starlight Express through completing a whole other quest, which gives you one more magical fruit, which makes you able to see Stella and Sterling and the flying train again, you can fly to the Tower of Nod, where you meet a slime who tells you about how Nod, who in his words is a big scary goon, who has been sleeping at the top of the tower for 300 years. I played this game over 15 years ago, and I only just realised that his name is Nodoff, because he nods off. Nodoff used to be friends with Serena for some reason and became worried when she started spending time with Corvus, a concern that would later become quite valid actually. But in the slime's words, he wasn't going to leave Serena in danger and he brought her to the tower. What? I know, I thought she died in Hope Springs too. I cannot believe this revelation. So the slime asks you to escort him to the top of the tower and wake Nod up, but when you get to the top, surprise, surprise, he's still asleep and cannot be woken. The slime says the last place he saw him awake was in Gittingham Palace and you should go there to see if you can find out what happened there. So of course that's where we head next. When you get there, you meet many ghosts throughout the palace, remarking on them opening cells for the girl and her friend with the wings, but that everyone in the palace died helping her. He then remarks that some lady just walked through ahead of us but wasn't sure who it was somehow. One of the ghosts you meet is a prisoner who saw the lady pass through and seemed to vaguely recognize her. Venturing even further, we meet another ghost who says a lady came through 300 years ago with a winged beast and was killed by Imperial soldiers just up ahead. The ghost tells us upon seeing the lady dying, the winged beast, Nodoff, shedded a single tear of unbearable sadness. But the tear turned into a magical jewel that wielded unimaginable power that was instantaneously released in one go. And Nodoff became consumed with bitterness and hatred towards humans because of course he did. He channeled that release of power and killed everyone in the palace. So the Gittish Empire was wiped out by Nodoff and not the dragon Greygnarl, I guess. We then get a flashback cutscene of Nodoff looming over Serena's dying body as she apologizes for not having found Nod's tear in order to relieve Corvus. She then starts to fade into death as Nodoff begs her to wake up. He then starts to cry, showing the creation of Nod's tear, the tear that Serena came to the palace to look for with Nodoff. We then go to the place of Serena's true death, pick up Nod's tear, return to the Tower of Nod, ascend to the top once again, give it to Nodoff, who awakes and instantly declares his hatred for mortals and fights us for waking him up from his 300-year nap. Valid. You defeat him and he apologizes for attacking you and said he was not feeling himself, but is now aware that Serena and Corvus had made their peace and passed on. He thanks you for this and gives you a lump of orichalcum to give to Serena should you ever encounter her again. But to my knowledge, we never encounter her in any form again after this. I don't know if she was a ghost or a reincarnation or an echo of the past, I've no clue. So what I can gather from this, the whole story of the post-game is, after the Imperial soldiers kill Serena's father and kidnap Corvus, Nodoff intervenes and brings her to the Tower of Nod to protect her. Serena and Nodoff learn about Nod's tear, neither knowing it's actually meant to come from Nodoff himself, and they search to protect it in order to find it, eventually leading them to Gittingham Palace. There, Serena is just a small distance away from finding Corvus when she is attacked and killed by Imperial soldiers, which makes Nodoff cry and wipes out everyone in the palace. He is so sad that he goes back to the Tower of Nod and sleeps for 300 years while Serena's spirit roams the planet in search of Corvus. I think I'm going to need a 300-year nap after this. So the moral of the story here is, don't cry on dead women? Okay, to finally wrap up, I think the reality of this story here shows that humanity is, and always will be, unpredictable. You can be a Celestian angel or an almighty god or even a mythical winged beast, and still you will not be able to meddle with the actions or the emotions of human beings. Love, anger, and any intense emotion makes us impulsive and reckless. But without any of those things, there would be nothing to fight for, nothing to search for, nothing to get out of bed for. I think it's summed up best in another DLC quest that grants you a cutscene from the past showing an interaction between Corvus and Aquila. Aquila is questioning Corvus on why he gets so involved with the mortals of Wormwood Creek, to which Corvus responds, "It is not for us to know the ways of the Almighty, but I trust the mortals. I understand now our duty as Celestians is to believe in them and to guide them on the path of righteousness. But I also understand that there are those who believe we should have no more to do with them than is absolutely necessary. You must decide for yourself what you believe." So basically, we cannot ever possibly know what is the right thing to do and how much we should involve ourselves in other people's lives, or if it can be a good or a bad thing to grow attached to certain people. But if you know in your soul you are being true to your own beliefs, then that's all you need. That's about as philosophical as I'm going to get now. I'm going to go back to making brain rot jokes. So that is, to as much extent as I can push my tiny little brain, the story of Corvus and Serena. This was a loaded one to get into, and I'm really enjoying making these character quests. If you want to see more of me, or you just like Dragon Quest, feel free to subscribe. All my content's entirely focused on the Dragon Quest franchise. But for now, thank you for watching. My name's Grania, and I like Dragon Quest.